for an extraordinary group of meetings, extraordinary hospitality, which is going to continue for the next few hours this evening. From our perspective, a highly productive few days at the ASEAN Summit here in Kuala Lumpur. I've been joined by a delegation, including our Minister of International Trade, and we have focused on building new partnerships and unlocking new economic opportunities that will benefit Canadian workers and their businesses. Nous sommes réunis ici à un moment à la fois crucial et rempli d'opportunités. Le monde est devenu plus dangereux et divisé. Le système de commerce mondial est en train de changer de manière fondamentale. L'évolution technologique et la transition énergétique s'accélèrent à un rythme sans précédent. L'ancien ordre mondial est revenu. Et même si le Canada a prospéré dans ce système, nous savons que la nostalgie n'est pas une stratégie. C'est pourquoi nous traçons une nouvelle voie à suivre pour notre pays. On November 4th, our government will table the first federal budget, our first federal budget. And that'll be our plan to protect our communities, our borders, our way of life. Our plan to build a stronger economy where everyone has a chance to get ahead. And our plan to empower Canadians with new opportunities, better careers, and a lower cost of living. Central to those missions is our intention to double our non-U.S. exports over the course of the next decade. That alone will generate $300 billion in more trade, new orders for Canadian resources, Canadian industries, and Canadian expertise. I chose my summit for my first visit as Prime Minister to Asia because the Canada-ASEAN relationship is full of potential. This is a region of nearly 700 million consumers with a market worth over $5 trillion. It's already Canada's second largest trading partner with over $260 billion in two-way merchandise trade alone. Yet, even at those levels, it still only represents about 10% of our exports. To build those exports, to double our non-U.S. exports, our government is working to strike a series of new trade deals, including here in the Indo-Pacific. In the past few months, we've signed new agreements with the United Arab Emirates in artificial intelligence, with the European Union in defense and broader trade, with Germany in critical minerals, with Mexico in agri-food. We signed a free trade deal with Ecuador that reduces or eliminates tariffs on the majority of Canadian exports. And last month, in Ottawa, we concluded a historic free trade agreement with Indonesia, Canada's first bilateral free trade agreement with an ASEAN nation. This week in Kuala Lumpur, we agreed to accelerate progress on a new Canada-ASEAN free trade agreement, targeting completion of that agreement next year. Yesterday, I met with the Prime Ministers of Laos and Vietnam, as well as the President of the Philippines, to move those talks forward. Now, that deal would add about $1.5 billion to our economy, giving Canadian workers and businesses greater access to this fast-growing market. In fact, probably, arguably, the fastest-growing market in the world. And would create jobs for Canadian workers in sectors ranging from critical minerals to clean tech, agri-food, aerospace, and advanced manufacturing, all while lowering prices for Canadian consumers on goods like electronics and clothing. In addition, President Marcos of the Philippines and I agreed yesterday to launch talks on a new free trade agreement between our two nations, again with the goal of concluding that agreement next year. This week, we also made significant progress on energy. Today, Canada and Malaysia signed a letter of intent to deepen investment in liquefied natural gas, and oil, nuclear power, and renewables. I met with the CEO and the senior management of Petronas, one of the world's largest energy companies and already a major investor in LNG in Canada, LNG Canada Phase 1, LNG facility in Kitimat, British Columbia. Now, Phase 2 of this project will double production, making the project as a whole the second largest LNG facility in the world, creating tens of thousands of new high-paying Canadian careers. That project, Phase 2, has been referred to our new Major Projects Office because we want it built, and we want it built faster to the benefit of Canadians, including Indigenous partners in the project. Together with Petronas, we are exploring other new opportunities to expand our partnership and strengthen Canada's role as a reliable energy supplier. By the end of this decade, 2030, Canada can produce nearly 50 million tons of LNG each year, enough to supply Singapore, where I'm going tomorrow, 5 times over. We can double that production again by 2040. Nous collaborons également dans le domaine du captage du carbone et en mettant nos ressources au service de la transition de l'ANAS vers une économie plus résiliente et à faible émission. En plaçant l'innovation canadienne au service des infrastructures énergétiques de l'ANAS, comme son nouveau réseau électrique, nous ouvrons la voie à des milliards de dollars de nouvelles possibilités pour les entreprises et les travailleurs canadiens. Et nous aidons aussi nos partenaires de l'ANAS à atteindre leurs objectifs en matière de connectivité. Canada's also unlocking new opportunities in technology. Canada's BlackBerry offers its Cybersecurity Center of Excellence here in Malaysia. And we announced an investment to expand that center into an international hub for cyber intelligence and security innovation, something I discussed this afternoon with Prime Minister Ibrahim. Today, I visited CAE, with whom Malaysia Airlines has just signed a deal to purchase another Canadian-built flight simulator. I met the CEO of AirAsia yesterday about a potentially large order for A220 planes designed and built in Quebec. These are the kinds of partnerships we will keep building because Canada has what the world wants. World-class talent with expertise in clean technology, artificial intelligence, life sciences, and quantum computing. We're the world's number one destination for master's degrees and doctorates. We have the most educated workforce in the world. We're an energy superpower with the 3rd largest reserves of oil and the 4th largest reserves of natural gas. We have an 85% clean grid, which we can readily increase by another 50% to power clean manufacturing, clean AI infrastructure, and the electrification of our sustainable economy. We have deposits of over 34 critical minerals, and we're amongst the top 5 producers for the 10 critical minerals most essential for the world's energy transition. Over the next 5 years, we will be quadrupling our defense industrial spending, strengthening our role in collective security and creating new careers in our defense and associated industries. Next week, Canada's Defense Minister will be in the Philippines to deepen our cooperation with Southeast Asia, expanding access for the Canadian Armed Forces for training and joint operations in the Philippines, strengthening our shared commitment to regional stability. The combination of these economic strengths and the budget strategy I referenced earlier, our budget strategy to spend less so that Canadians can invest more, will give investors confidence to build more in Canada. It will give innovators the stability they need to take risks in Canada. And it will reinforce the reasons the world has to trust Canadians as reliable partners. Le Canada a ce que le monde veut. Le Canada a ce dont le monde a besoin. C'est à nous de vendre au monde ce que le Canada a à offrir. Selling our products to the world is a Team Canada effort. Federal ministers are working hard, securing deals and building relationships across Asia. Premiers from British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, to Newfoundland and Labrador and Prince Edward Island are leading trade missions across the region. Demain, je me rendrai à Singapour pour rencontrer le Premier ministre Lawrence Wong, ainsi que les grands investisseurs pour renforcer la coopération dans les domaines du commerce, de l'énergie et de la technologie. Et plus tard cette semaine, je vais participer au sommet des dirigeants de l'APEC en Corée du Sud pour poursuivre ces progrès et resserrer nos liens dans les domaines de l'agriculture, de la défense et des minéraux critiques. To finish, to quote our host, Prime Minister Ibrahim, "The old world order is disappearing and a new one has yet to emerge. Times like this, it's time to be bold, because how we respond will shape Canada's path for decades to come. By making generational investments at home and by building deeper partnerships abroad, we will build Canada strong." And with that, I'd be happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We're now going to begin with questions from the Canadian delegation. First question, première question, Sarah.
Hi, Prime Minister. Sarah Ritchie with the Canadian Press. Have you had any contact with President Trump since Thursday?
I have not.
Given that President Trump said today on Air Force One, I don't know if you heard this, but in the last hour, he said he doesn't plan to meet with you for a long time. Is it worth continuing to pursue a discussion, a meeting, a phone call with him at this point?
I didn't see the comment. Look, we stand ready to sit down with the United States, myself with the President, my colleagues with their colleagues, when the U.S. is ready to sit down. We had made considerable progress on a supplement to the trading relationship that we had, considerable progress in the areas of steel, aluminum, and energy associated areas as well. And as I just said, we're ready to sit down when they are ready to do that. If they're not ready to do that, as those comments indicate, then we were always going to do these things, to be clear. We're going to first and foremost build our economy, build it with generational investments, and you will see that not just the scale of the ambition, but the speed with which we put that into effect in the budget on November 4th, and continue to do what we've been doing over the course of the last few days and over the course of recent months, which is to build those other partnerships and deepen those other partnerships on which we're getting very much traction. Thank you.
Next question, Murray.
Hi, Prime Minister. Murray Brewster with
Hi,
CBC News. President Trump says he's canceled these trade talks because he's upset about the Ontario government ad. We've heard from the Business Council of Canada and even some of President Trump's own advisors who suggest the frustration with Canada runs deeper. So is this about the ads or is this about something else?
Well, look, as I say, and there were a series of very detailed, very specific, very comprehensive discussions, negotiations on the areas I just listed to in response to the previous question, up until the point of those ads running. First point. Second point, I would suggest you take the President at his word for his reason. And that is the reason why, from the perspective of the federal government, which I'm responsible, we stand ready to pick up on those discussions when the United States wishes to pick up on those discussions. So those in the room, those exchanging term sheets, those having the discussions about specific areas where we can make mutual progress to the benefit of workers and businesses and communities in our respective countries, had been making progress. Those ads came, the President had the reactions which you have seen, made the decisions that he has made, which, you know, those are his decisions to take, and we're in the situation we're in.
Follow-up.
As a follow-up, Prime Minister, given everything that we've seen, do you really think the United States is interested in making a trade deal with Canada?
Look, we are their second largest trading partner. We provide a series of essential goods for their economy. We are one of many providers, but we provide in some areas essential goods for their economy. And we create more room for them to do other things. I'll give you an example. If you look at Canadian exports of aluminum to the United States, and aluminum is bauxite and energy. I mean, there's a little more to it, but can simplify it to that. The embedded energy in the Canadian aluminum exports, which provides 60% of the aluminum to the U.S. market, is the equivalent of the energy of 10 Hoover dams in the United States. Now, is the best use of that scale of energy, creating that scale of energy to make aluminum in the United States, as opposed to continue to foster and power the AI revolution, which the U.S. is leading, or power homes and others. I mean, these are decisions for the United States to make. Point being, as a supplier to the United States, and I gave aluminum as one, I could give many examples, we are an important supplier in many areas. As well, we are a large customer. For over 30 states, Canada is the largest export customer for those states in the United States. So there is a very strong, deep trading relationship, and there is an alignment of interests in many areas. And that's the reason why we have elements of the arrangements that we have today with a large degree of low tariff trade and the benefits from that. So, we're ready to have those discussions to further improve them, and we'll have them when it's appropriate. But we're not resting because we can build. The return on building at home is far greater than the hit from trade turbulence with the United States, and the opportunities internationally are considerable. And candidly, Canada has not focused on the relationships to the same extent as we should have in any trading environment with the United States, let alone a situation where they're changing their trade policy. And that's what we're doing now.
Next question. Prochaine question.
Judy Trin with CTV News. Donald Trump says he doesn't want to see you at all at APEC.
Wow.
Has the Canadian government given any consideration to the possibility that he doesn't want to negotiate? And do you have a contingency plan for that?
We have yes. The short answer is yes. To your follow-up, no, I'm not about to detail those contingency plans. But I will go to the big, obvious plan that is there in plain sight and will be further detailed in the budget on November 4th. And we have been saying this for months. I said this before I was elected. Emphasize the importance of us giving ourselves far more than any foreign government could take away, whatever the trading environment. And that's to build at home and to build strong at home. And we intend to unleash hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars of investment right here at home. Well, not right here, but metaphorically there at home in Canada while we're building these partnerships.
Less than a month ago, you were at the White House. You seemed very cordial, friendly with President Trump. The two of you were joking. You said you were going to walk away with a good deal. He said that we would be very happy. Is the U.S. toying with Canada? And how did your relationship with Donald Trump go south so fast?
It's a question for him.
Next question. Yasmin.
Yasmin Mehdi avec Radio-Canada. On
Merci.
avait l'impression dans les dernières semaines que les négociations avec les États-Unis avançaient plutôt bien.
Oui.
Qu'est-ce qui s'est passé? Est-ce que c'est la publicité ou est-ce qu'il y avait autre chose du côté américain?
Tout d'abord, je reconnais votre description. On fait de progrès dans les négociations, des progrès détaillés, des progrès constructifs, des progrès approfondis en ce qui concerne l'acier, l'aluminium, l'énergie, d'autres secteurs alliés. Et ce n'était pas fini, c'est évident, ce n'était pas fini, mais on était près d'un accord. Okay? Ensuite, il y avait les publicités. Et tout est changé, où la position du gouvernement américain a changé. Ça, c'est évident. C'est pas plus compliqué que ça.
Ça va? Par rapport à M. Ford, j'aimerais savoir, est-ce que vous lui avez demandé de retirer la publicité? Est-ce qu'il a nui aux efforts du Canada?
Bon, alors, c'est la responsabilité du gouvernement du Canada de négocier des accords commerciaux, de négocier des traites à l'étranger. Premier point. Deuxième point. Nous avons décidé de ne pas faire des publicités aux États-Unis. OK? C'était un choix. C'était évident pour nous de ne pas faire. OK.
Donc,
Et
Doug
le
Ford
reste est
donc, Doug Ford a fait une
assez
erreur.
clair.
C'était une erreur de la part de
Next
Doug
Il a pris une décision,
Next question. Prochaine question. Brian.
une décision différente de la décision du gouvernement du Canada qui est responsable pour cette relation.
Sorry, who's Brian? What Brian's next question?
Why don't we have
We'll go to
Brian's
Brian.
question, and we'll follow up when you come.
I'll ask a version of this so you can answer it.
I figured you might.
If it is true that a TV ad, that you were close to a deal, exchanging term sheets, and a TV ad caused all of this to be canceled, halted, Trump does not want to meet, are you upset at Premier Doug Ford for running this ad? If this is true that this ad spoiled something that was very close?
Look, I'd say the following, which is that in any complicated, high-stakes negotiation, you can get unexpected twists and turns, and you have to keep your cool during those situations. It doesn't pay to be upset. Emotions don't carry you very far. And we had made progress, to repeat. And we stand by the progress that had been made. The Government of Canada does. And we are ready, when appropriate, to pick that up. And I'll just reemphasize that it is the responsibility of the Government of Canada to have these negotiations. And others will have opinions, and others welcome free advice, unsolicited advice is entirely appropriate. Every Canadian is a stakeholder in these negotiations. Every Canadian is a stakeholder in the fact that we're making progress in ASEAN, that we have the agreement with Indonesia, that we have just decided to accelerate trade talks with the Philippines, with ASEAN as a whole. Every Canadian has a stakeholder, is a stakeholder in the evolution of our relationship with China. And the discussions that we will be having at APEC with giants there. So that's the focus, sans émotion, et on va continuer comme ça.
Follow-up.
And just to cast things ahead to where you're going later this week in Korea, can you give us an update on, do you expect to meet the Chinese president at APEC? And what kind of conversations do you expect to have with the Chinese delegation there?
I do expect to, there are plans for me and President Xi to meet. We will pick up on the discussions I had with Premier Lee in New York a few weeks ago. A broad range of issues, both in terms of the commercial relationship, as well as the evolution of the global system. So I look forward to the meeting with the President. Il y aura une réunion pour moi avec le président de la Chine, Xi Jinping, et les sujets vont inclure les enjeux commerciaux et puis l'évolution du système global. Et on a une bonne fondation, une base après la discussion que j'ai eue avec Monsieur le Premier ministre Lee à New York il y a quelques semaines.
Next question, Rafi.
Hi, Prime Minister Rafi Buchanan, CBC. President Trump threatened to impose this additional 10% tariff, regardless of Ontario saying it would take the ad down. Does that suggest there is nothing to be gained from backing down to the U.S. president?
Well, look, with respect to the additional tariff, we haven't seen the specifics about that. And look, I don't want to make a generalization of the situation. I'll repeat and I'll reemphasize, we've made significant progress. We stand by the progress that we had made. We think there is a very good addition to the trading relationship, an additional deal, if you will, that is in the interests of certainly Canadian workers, Canadian families, but very much American workers and American families as well. It's a win-win. When the time comes to pick that up, we would suggest picking it up from there.
Follow-up?
This progress you have made, you've spoken a lot about sectoral tariffs. During your campaign, you were speaking a lot about reaching a comprehensive security and energy deal. Did you at one point give up on that? If so, why?
We talked about, maybe you weren't there, but in July, when we made the decision that we evolved our tariffs with respect to the United States, because we had reached a point by the middle of the summer where under the executive order that pertained at then and still pertains, that the substantial proportion of our trade with the United States is tariff-free. The U.S. was less interested in the security element of the partnership, which is their decision. Look, and so less interested in that, and as well was focused in, for most countries, on these so-called 232 sectors, which are by definition sectoral. And they're the major issue for our economy: steel, aluminum, autos, forest products, and therefore naturally it comes to that, and that's where we've concentrated our efforts. Let me take a step back and just a point of context here, which is, the United States has a trade policy. It has a new approach to trade that has come in place with the new administration. We understand that. We respect that. They apply that policy to every country in the world. You see elements of it in the agreements that were announced here in Kuala Lumpur in the last 24 hours. And so that's the approach that one deals with with respect to having negotiations with the Americans. So it just follows. Our approach in terms of negotiations with Indonesia, our approach with respect to the EU, for example, is much more comprehensive. It includes security, it includes defense, it includes broader elements, and there's a symmetry. They're symmetric, those arrangements, and that's how we tend to do trade. But the U.S. does it differently. It's not how we tend to do trade. That is how we do trade, and the exception is the way the U.S. is doing trade.
Next question, Ian.
Ian Austin from the New York Times. When you made several concessions to the United States, dropping the retaliatory tariffs, the digital tax, and so on, you were challenged, and you said there's a time to push back and there's a time to talk. Well, the talks ended.
Well, they just ended. Yes.
Yeah. So, are we back into retaliation? Does this open the door to things like removing the EV tariff?
Look, I wouldn't speculate on that. I'd say the following. You can speculate. I'm not going to speculate on that. I'd say the following. The approach that the previous government put in place in terms of retaliation and that we kept on for a period of time, the reality is that Canada was one of only 2 countries that had retaliatory tariffs on. So everybody had focus, but only 2 countries had those in place. And the value of those retaliations was diminishing. Remember that tariffs, we put retaliatory tariffs on, there is a cost at home for those tariffs. They were designed to minimize those costs, but there's still a cost at home. And those costs build up over time. So we took the decision, we stand by it in terms of taking those down, taking those off, and then we made the progress that we did. We will, it goes to the earlier question, I think it was Judy's question about contingency plans, and right. And we have a series of measures that we have put in place for the strategic sector, so-called strategic sectors for steel, for aluminum, both in terms of liquidity support, in terms of more strategic support, so that billions of dollars of strategic support so they can pivot to new markets, new products, by Canadian policies that are just now getting fully articulated and ramping up, so that we can support there. And there will be more coming in the budget as part of a broader industrial and trade diversification strategy, climate competitiveness strategies, which will help for all of this. So that's the focus of the reaction. I mean, obviously, we will protect markets if we see big asymmetries in terms of access, but it's not a decision for today.
Follow-up?
And the end of these talks, which you've described as being serious and constructive for what seems like a capricious reason, does this underscore that? Is there any value in trying to negotiate something with the Trump administration? Is its word worth anything?
Look, I think that yes. I mean, the short answer is yes. There is value. There's tremendous value in those negotiations. We've seen that the U.S. administration has made a series of commitments and agreements that is stood by. Some of those have been in the peace and security area. Some of them have been on the trade side. But just to be absolutely clear, we represent Canada. We are going to fight for Canadians. We are only going to agree to a deal through a negotiation that is in the best interests of Canadians. They are working in the best interests of Americans. There are places where those interests are aligned and they overlap, and we can have a deal. But we're not going to accept something that is not in the best interests of Canadians, and they understand that.
Next question, Mackenzie.
Okay, Mackenzie, you can ask your en anglais.
Mackenzie Gray with Global News. I'd like to follow up on Sarah's earlier question. I know you said you haven't spoken to the president, but you've been known to text with him. Have you reached out to him personally at all? Since
The president knows that I'm available to speak to the president, as I would be, as you would expect. As president of the United States, so of course, make myself available and make myself available for other world leaders as they wish to. We will both be in APEC. Canada is a member of APEC. I mean, we're going to be there, very much so.
Follow-up?
So you haven't reached out to the president at all?
The president and I have not spoken since he took this decision.
And you want to chat with him at APEC?
We are ready to have discussions when the Americans wish to have those discussions. But we're not, obviously, we don't dictate the timing of that.
And last question, dernière question, Steve Chase.
Steve Chase, Globe and Mail. I wanted to ask you about where the relationship with China could go. And your predecessor fenced off significant portions of the Canadian economy from Chinese investment, critical minerals, anything related to national security, academic collaboration, the list goes on and on. So my question for you is, are you willing to revisit or consider lowering some of those restrictions so that more Chinese investment could flow into Canada?
Well, it's the start of a broader discussion. There were greater restrictions that were in place given other issues in the relationship, first point. Secondly, there needs to be a resetting of expectations, or we're in the process of a resetting of expectations of where the relationship can go, the extent to which we have different systems, where the relationship can go and where it won't go. And that's part of the discussion that has begun. I think what is absolutely clear is that a relationship, for example, where there are extreme restrictions on travel between our two countries is an unusual place for the Canadian-China relationship to be, given the history of the relationship, given the long history of travel between our two countries. That is one example. It's a very obvious example that progress can be made. There are issues, as people well know, in agriculture, for fishery goods. There's issues in manufacturing and others, and we will explore what we can build on. Relationships rebuild over time when they have been when they have changed for the worse, and so we have a lot of areas on which we can build. And look, last point, which is that this is our second largest trading partner. This is the second largest economy in the world. This is one of the most influential actors in terms of the global system, such as it is, and it is a country with whom we had no senior level contact for 7 years until I met Premier Lee in New York. So we're starting from a base, and we can move quite substantially. We're starting from a very low base, and we can move quite substantially before we start to get to sensitive areas.
Would you like to, or is a free trade agreement with China out of the question? And if you could, would you drop EV tariffs against?
I look forward to the discussions with President Xi, and they're about much broader set of issues than trade, and we'll be in better position to start answering questions like that as the relationship evolves and deepens. So we don't go in. There's no preset offer issue. This is the difference between relationship and transaction. We're starting relationship, building up the relationship on that.
Thank you. This
Thank
puts
you.
an end to our press conference. C'est ce qui m'a fait notre conférence de presse. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Merci. Thank you.